fluid. Connected. Hello, everybody. We are experiencing, seems to be what everyone is experiencing, which is X being, well, down or under or something else. But hello, everybody. My name is Piotr. This is the Global Gambit. That's my show. And we're coming to you from Portugal. This is a hotel room. You can tell from the telephone out there. But yesterday I was talking about sort of Ukraine and the events that have preceded in the past week, and one of the big events that happened late on Sunday evening, and we held an impromptu space on X, was about Romania. Romania is facing democratic crises, but Romania is facing quite a turbulent period politically, given what happened late last year with its election and sort of, shall we say, the influences of external factors like the European Union and so on. But to join me and talk about that is, well, he's a known chap, I would say. I think he's far more famous than I am. George Buhnici, who I think I said that right, George?
Nobody ever said it right, not even my teachers in middle school, so it's okay. But let me get your name. So your name is actually Piotr Kurzin. I believe this is gonna be the issue with a live done in turbulent times. Apparently, I'm all alone now.
Yeah, you were all alone, and now you're back again.
I'm taking over
my own stream.
Well, I'm taking over your stream, Piotr.
I kicked out. Well, you're kicking me out. I'm kicking someone out. But anyway, Hello, everybody. Yeah. It is what it is. We're talking about Romania. But so you've been sort of on the front end of this for a long time, George, trying to sort of navigate, shall we say, the delicate democracy, which is, I think, one of the key points you made yesterday, which is Romania is still quite a young democracy. How do you make sense of sort of what's happening at the moment? With the sort of, do you think that there is an overreach of the EU? Let's just get straight into it. Do you think there's an overreach of the EU in trying to influence the Romanian, elections, or do you think that what's happening is the right thing?
What exactly happened after our live last night? After that, another infamous space on X. I was called out by some guys on the, let's say, pro-European side, like I'm too centrist, too talking in, I don't know, from a third person view and not calling out all sides. So I'm trying to stay in the middle, be a centrist, let's say, be a journalist, because I'm not an activist. When I'm looking at what's happening, I would like to look again at facts. If you remember when we talked the previous time, I was keen on going about facts and something we can actually account for. We can see who said or what did they said, what did they do, and stuff like that. So there's a few things happening. I haven't seen a lot of let's say quotes, important quotes from European leaders in the past 24 hours. Not so much talk about everything. So I see a lot of, I don't know, outrage from some of the voices in the US, but European leaders are let's say, looking at the whole situation from, I don't know, they want to see how it plays out. You could say from what's happening in Europe now that most of the European leaders are, I don't know, maybe, how do we say it? They are paying attention without acting. Okay, they are looking, not acting. Maybe it suits them. Maybe it's something they like. But without any proof, there's nothing to say about it's something they did, because we have a young democracy, but it's a functioning democracy. And I was just going about it earlier on X. Democracy is not only about the president. It's at least 4 pillars. Ideally, it's 5. You have the president, but you also have the government, you have the parliament, and you have the justice system, and you should have the power of the press. So, yeah, press these days, old media has become so biased that it's become a tug of war. It's been used by all parties involved. Justice, we still have it. It's not functioning. It's not a well-oiled machine, but it's still there. The parliament, it's locked in. So we just had elections, and nobody went against those elections. Nobody said that the elections were rigged. So actually, we had parliamentary elections, and the parliament is locked in for the next 4 years. Based on that parliament, we have a running a government that's actually working. There's an issue with the prime minister, who is being accused of having some shady, let's say, dealings with a real estate company that went down recently in a corruption case. He will go down eventually. I'm sure about it. He already knows it. It's just a matter of, I don't know, days and weeks until the prime minister is going away. But still, the government is there, and the coalition supporting that government is just going to appoint another prime minister. They're going to go to the president and say, this is our nominee. And the president will nominate a new prime minister. So apart from the president issue, the rest of the democracy is still running pretty well.
Yeah, George, just a couple of things on that. So we've got a couple of people who are, well, they exist, which is a very conspiracy-esque name. George, he's wondering if you could give a quick breakdown of, well, like the sort of political climate in Romania, like who's pro-Ukraine, who's more pro-Russia, because obviously Romania, much like, well, to a lesser extent, possibly like its neighbor Moldova next door, there's obviously been this tug of war between Russian and whatever, Western, US, European forces. So can you give us sort of an outline of the main forces, how strong they are on either side, and so on?
Well, actually, there's not like there hasn't been until 2024 like a very public and strong organization, party, anyone that was, let's say, a staunch supporter of Russian interest. We had Diana Șoșoacă, part of a very small party. She was denied her candidacy in the previous elections, and it's pretty similar to what's happening to Călin Georgescu, because she made some very, let's say, some statements that were considered unconstitutional, and they disqualified her they disqualified her candidacy. Mm-hmm. She went on to become an European parliament, to go into the European Parliament. So now she's there. And we've all seen what's been happening with Mrs. Șoșoacă in Brussels. But apart from that, I haven't seen any, strong voices to support Russia's interest locally. Romania has been historically traumatized by Russian wisdom, by Russian friendship. Yeah. And after the Second World War, we have been liberated and then extricated by the Sovroms. So this economical arrangement through which the Soviets have been draining agricultural products and all kind of goods from Romania. So our relationship with the Russians has never been a good one. We cannot remember a time in history when we had a long period of friendship. There were some coalitions, it's in the history books. But if you go out on the street and ask Romanians about Russia, it's going to be the same with the EU. 90% of Romanians are looking to Western countries, to Western values, to Western culture. If you go into clubs, they're going to listen to pop music or Balkan music, but not Russian music. They're going to travel to exotic destinations, but mostly Europe. I don't know, Greece, Turkey. So even before the special operation, the war in Ukraine, there weren't so many flights towards Russia. We used to have, I can recall that we used to have at some point a direct flight to Moscow. But most of the Romanian businessmen I was talking to, they've been telling me that to go to Moscow whenever they had to do some business there for multinationals and stuff like that, they used to go through Istanbul or Dubai or stuff like that. So that's about it. There's not much to connect us, let's say, to that Russian spirit or that Russian wisdom or that, I don't know, the Russian mirror. Well, we have the word for yes is da. We have the same da. And I went public a few years back and I said, man, I would change that word because makes us look too Russians when we travel. And I was again attacked with trolls, but it was a joke. But still.
But George, I want to just jump in on that point there, because for me, like, I am half English and I'm half Russian, and not to make this a personal sort of story, but it has been a very, I think, challenging 3 years identity-wise. People immediately hear that and be like, oh my God, this guy's trying to say he's had it bad or something. No, but it's quite challenging when you come from both sides of what's happening in Ukraine and you sort of want to be proud of your heritage, but equally you can't agree with what's happening just on principle. So sort of I've had that in places that I visited. I spent a lot of time visiting Romania and Bulgaria and parts of the Balkans and Serbia particularly, because there were a lot of people who were Western, right? They have American Serbs or people who have been born in the West, and they feel similar in that sense of like they want to be proud of that, but then they're also torn because of what's happening right now or in previous history. Like, I don't know, the cases in Kosovo or Serbia come to mind as well. So, I mean, you know, how do you balance trying to sort of appreciate the influence of Slavic culture or Russian culture in Romania, for example, not necessarily in political interference, versus that westernization that has happened in Romania? Because I think Romania and Bulgaria have really modernized since they joined the Schengen area and deepened their integration with the European Union. So I'm quite interested for your sort of thoughts on that social cultural element, if that makes sense.
Makes total sense because I grew through that. So personal anecdote, while in school, we were supposed to learn in gymnasium like 2 foreign languages, and I was studying French. And the second language, although everybody wanted to learn English, it was Russian. And because it was what it was. Before the revolution, we had mostly teachers teaching Russian because of economic connections with the Soviets. And in the 90s, when I went for gymnasium, I was frustrated by the fact that I had to learn Russian. Fact is, I actually love languages, and I can read the Slavic, let's say, I don't know, font, the Slavic writing, the Russian writing. And whenever I travel to Bulgaria or anywhere else, and when I see the Russian font, I can read it and I understand a few words. I was actually pretty good in Russian in school, but I never got to love properly the language because it was forced on me. It wasn't like I had an alternative. I had to learn Russian, but because the educational system didn't have anything else to offer. And it's the same with most Romanians. We felt the boot of the Soviets for so many decades that it's still living inside us. It's a living trauma. So that's that Soviet trauma on Romanians is like a blessing now, because we can see evil when we see it. We can recognize it. It's the fact that there's this saying that Europe is going to be killed by empathy, is going to suicide by empathy. Romanians will not, because and Ukrainians for that matter, because we can recognize evil when we see it. We can call out a dictator when we see it. We see him because when anyone comes and promise you the golden age, I'm going to look back in history, and it never turned out like a golden age. Never did. No supreme leader that promised a golden age actually brought upon that golden age. So that's something we live with. We understand Russian wisdom as it is. It's a complicated relationship between us and the Russians, even after the revolution, after the breakup of the USSR. We never been part of the USSR, but we've been under the influence, under, let's say, their influence for a very long time, because we have been under communism. And we still have those stories to tell. And I still have memories of my childhood without enough electricity, without enough hot water, without sausage, without cheese, without milk. My father had to go to extreme lengths to get into a bit of corruption to just get milk for his children. Okay. And personal anecdote, and I'm getting goosebumps when I'm telling you this, because I just remembered I almost died in a line for eggs. I was in a line for eggs when I was like 6 years old, and I mistook the meat line for the egg line, and the people were jostling in the queue for meat. And at one point, my mother was working, and she sent me. She told me, when you come back from school, I was 6 again. I was just going in my first year in school. Very early, the communists wanted us to come up as fast as possible, and she told me, you need to go around 1 p.m. and be in line for eggs, because you need to get those eggs, or butter, something like this. But it was the wrong queue. And I got in the wrong queue, and I was almost crushed in that line, because people were afraid they will not get to buy meat. And one lady turned to me and said, "Kid, what are you doing here? You're going to get killed. Get out of here." And I said, "Yeah, but my mother sent me to get eggs." She said, "This is the meat line. Get out of here. You're going to get yourself killed." Okay, so this is a personal anecdote from communism, from a period when a supreme leader promised us the golden age in 4 years and a half instead of 5 years. We had a saying, we're gonna achieve greatness in 4.5 years instead of 5. So can you see the rage? Can you see the rage? Can you feel the rage inside boiling when I'm recollecting thoughts from 3 decades ago?
No, it certainly comes across the delicacy of it. I think is what certainly comes to mind when I went to Romania most recently. I just remember spending a good week, I think, in Timișoara, because I was very interested in the fact that the revolution broke out there, and you can still see the bullets. Well, for anyone who hasn't been, you can go to the main square, the main street, and you'll see gunshots and very deliberately left there. Well, that's what I think is very powerful about it, is that the main building is just littered with bullet holes and bits of it that have been, it still can sometimes break off, I think, right? Because the brick is the stone is still being eroded from weather and other things like that. Structural integrity is still wearing away a little bit. But yeah, no, it's very powerful. And before I wanted to do maybe a bit of a more historical dive with Ceausescu and the whole situation, what happened in 89, I'm a little bit more just about what's happening at the moment, because maybe we can then sort of come back around to the lessons learned or not being learned. But, already we've had a few people in the comments here just make it very clear sort of why can't you let the guy run and let the people decide? That's one person who's asked that kind of question. Another said, and it's sort of what I was challenging you last night on the Twitter space, right? Which was sort of, the guy has received 40% of the projected vote. Some other people here are saying that he's actually received over 1,500 complaints or something on the BEC. 1,500 contestations. So there is obviously a lot of controversiality about Georgescu, but at the same time, sort of, is it not principally too far to just ban him from running altogether and just allow his decimation at the poll booth to be the definitive answer? I know what you're going to say, but I still want you to outline.
I don't actually know what I'm going to say because
okay.
Because if I'm going to say, yeah, let's go to the ballot box, it says that we admit defeat to a very well-organized tactical operation. Right. On the other hand, yes, it's admitting defeat on our democracy, that it's not working. And again, we don't have all the information. We don't have all the facts. There's allegations against Mr. Georgescu. There's accusations against him. But there's not a definitive, he hasn't been trialed and sentenced. That takes a long time in any democracy. In any working democracy, you cannot have a very short trial. We had that. It was very bad. And it's also an open trauma for this country that you can see in that stupid meme I posted in the previous election cycle. For me, it was just a dank meme, but it's traumatic for many Romanians. So a short trial, not a good idea, okay? But we cannot ignore that there are very strong accusations against Mr. Georgescu, and I'm just going to go very briefly over them. Mm-hmm. We have incitement to actions against the constitutional order, trying to undermine Romania's constitutional framework, potentially through his rhetoric or actions. His rhetoric, his speeches, his statements are all online. We live in a digital age. There's proof for a lot of statements. And during the electoral process, the BEC has actually the authority to, let's say no based on just statements that a candidate is doing. That's my understanding. I don't fully understand the whole process, but voting on their conscience also goes through these rules, okay? Second, communicating false information specifically tied to misreporting his campaign finances, including declaring zero expenses despite evidence of significant funding, like a TikTok campaign and all that. So I think that's the Achilles heel. When you go out and say, my campaign is funded by zero euros, $0, zero lei, that's a huge red flag for anyone. Yeah, I've said this before. I'm going to say it again. We live on the internet. I'm doing here over on X, on YouTube, everywhere. We understand how it works. You don't get to so many millions of views organically, so quick, so fast. Yeah, it doesn't just happen. Stuff like that doesn't just happen.
And well, maybe if you're a gentleman called George Buhnici, maybe it does happen, just yourself. You just bring in that's me trying to be complimentary to your ability to command a very strong social media presence there, George. No. Okay. All right. Well, I had a go, guys, but there we go. Sorry.
Okay. So zero budget. Yeah. Okay. Zero budget. And there's been proof about funding from different sources, different connections to different people. None of them legally connected to Mr. Georgescu. There were people that were disconnected legally, let's say, officially from him, supporting his campaign. So investigators, prosecutors are now trying to connect these people to Mr. Georgescu. They didn't do it yet. Fact. Number 3. False statements regarding funding sources. Prosecutors allege, like I said, he misrepresented the origins of his campaign finances, which reportedly included unreported cryptocurrency funds and foreign support. So we know he has been seen and he acknowledges to have been working with the Romanian mercenary, Mr. Potra. Yep. And Mr. Potra has been also funding Mr. Georgescu's travels with a car and some other stuff. Okay, you still there? Are we still connected? I'm still running the show on my own. Yeah. So there's connections to people that have been funding his campaign from different places. Okay. Again, prosecutors are working for that, and they need to bring substantial proof. So far, we just heard conversations between parties involved, talking about going about the campaign and finances, but nothing, I don't know, to stop you in your tracks when you hear Mr. Georgescu acknowledging foreign funding or stuff like that. So again, he's not being arrested or prosecuted for that because they didn't actually prove direct connection. The fourth one is founding or supporting a fascist, racist, or xenophobic organization. And this charge stems from his express support for sympathizers of the Iron Guard, a pre-World War II fascist and anti-Semitic movement banned under Romanian law. And that's the issue. Mrs. Șoșoacă has done the same. She went to an Iron Guard, to a Legionnaire rally, to an event. She attended and she made some very strong statements while she was there. She acknowledged the importance of the leader of that movement, which is really illegal under Romanian law, and she knows that. Okay, so it's illegal in Romania to say the name and to say that I support that, let's say, historical figure in the Iron Guard. Mr. Georgescu also showed some sympathy and has expressed his ideas that history needs to be rewritten. The Romanian Revolution was a coup d'etat and stuff like that. Things that are historically locked in, but he's trying to rewrite some history. So he's trying to get in some people from the far right, and this is far right. When we actually look at right or left, the Legionnaires are on the far. Okay, so this is far right. But again, direct connections, only some speeches and some statements, and some connections to some people surrounding him that have been active in this movement. Anything that, again, is that could stop him, I don't know. It's not for me to say. But he praised historical figures like Ion Antonescu and, again, the guy I told you earlier, Mr. Zelea Codreanu, controversial Romanian leaders associated with fascism and war crimes, genocide. So these guys killed people. Yeah, the Legionnaires killed 2 prime ministers and done a lot of bad things in this country, and they still have a fringe following. Yeah, we need to acknowledge that Nazism still lives in many countries. It's an issue in Germany and Ukraine. I've seen reports of Nazism in many countries, and if you go ahead and talk to Germans at a beer garden or during Oktoberfest, some of them will acknowledge their views. It's still there in society, but you cannot accept this in politics because it's against the law. And another accusation about an anti-Semitic organization, which again is connected to the others. So a lot of different accusations, different allegations. If you put all of them together, it's like, I don't know, like a castle made out of cards, and you want it to stick. You want it to have it stick. I'm not so sure about it, okay? I'm not so sure it's good enough to stop Mr. Georgescu from running. I'm not sure. It's not for me to say. This is why we have a justice system. Okay, this is the place where I say, look, these are the allegations, these are the accusations, this is his statements, this is what we've seen him doing, and this is what are the prosecutors are showing. But it's up to a court to decide. This is why we have justice.
I want to sort of make a couple of things and then frame it back in for a sort of a follow-up or whatever, but like to expand on this point, because what you're talking about in terms of far right or populist or whatever, obviously labels, and I made this comment in my stream yesterday, which was a bit of a informal, unstructured one, but largely my point is that I'm sure you're familiar with the Overton window, right? And the idea that the political spectrum as we recognize it today has fundamentally shifted. Anything that what used to be what we consider to be centrist has largely shifted to the right. So, when Trump first became a candidate for the Republican Party in 2015, in the build up to the election and during the election campaigning, you'd have, usually it would be a Democrat and a Republican, or a left leaning and a right leaning. But then because you had a MAGA right, which was so different to, say, the traditional conservatism, you had to have a MAGA commentator. So the narrative was immediately dominated more by the right leaning spectrum, or part of the political spectrum. And therefore it began to sort of, and I'm not saying that everything's perfect on one side or not, but it was lopsided. And ever since then, the political orientation and typology, if you want, spectrum, has been shifting. And so now, for many MAGAs, as you said on the space yesterday, of which I do agree with you, most of them were not just right-leaning, they were full-blown MAGA cultist, fanatical types. Anyone who doesn't agree with everything, not just most of, but everything Trump is doing, is a leftist or a communist. I'm a communist, apparently, even though I live in the UK, which is one of the most capitalistic countries, because we've been, Margaret Thatcher. People, this is the sort of thing. People think that Margaret Thatcher is sort of, she's a bit of a socialist, actually. She wanted to join the market economy of the European Union socialist bloc, right? People call Margaret Thatcher a communist because she was not these groups in the MAGA group. So anyway, so you're saying that Georgescu is not just, he's fighting in a conventional sense. He is full-blown, right way, far right, because of the comments that he's made about historical matters. And therefore, you don't think really he's too far much that he shouldn't be allowed to run? Or that's a loaded question. But
again, it's not my job to stop him from running. It's not my job to decide. I know it sounds boring and it sounds, I don't know, but it's actually not my job to decide if he can run or not. I'm looking at very troublesome stuff that he's been saying about his past, about a lot of things. But according to the law, we need a court to decide if he can run or not. Yeah? Because if you look at his statements...
The French ambassador flying... But as they asked you yesterday, sorry, I'm going to be provocative, right?
Go ahead.
As they said yesterday, right, the French ambassador went and met the court officials. Isn't that a little bit problematic because the EU is trying to influence the outcome of a democratic election in a sovereign state? Or are there details that they omitted and I'm missing something?
I don't know, but what I do see. Okay, I don't know about any shady meetings in behind the curtains. I'm sure there are. I'm sure the guys in the intelligence community are talking a lot among themselves, inside the country and outside the country. I'm sure presidents and prime ministers and foreign affairs officials and stuff like that, it's buzzing. I'm sure the red phones, whatever the colors is, they are actually off the hook, yeah? But again, we had a special envoy from the Trump administration inquiring about the Tates. And the Romanian foreign affairs minister came out and said he felt pressured to release the Tates. And then he walked back on that after the prime minister threatened to take him out of the government. Yeah, so we can acknowledge pressure from many sides for many things. And Romania is not such a great country. It's not a big country. So we are actually, let's say, not only a young democracy, but we are not actually militarily strong. We are growing economically. We are still yet to find our voice. And that gets us into all kinds of situations when our previous president hasn't given any interviews. So we don't know much about democracy, and we have a big troubles enforcing. So there's not enough to show that we have a strong voice. We are not very opinionated, and as you can see also from my stance, we are not 100% sure about anything because there's a lot going on in the back all the time.
So is there I'm just seeing on the comments here that sort of people are talking about the westernization of Romania. So, you know, Georgescu for some represents a return to sort of, well, days of old or something quintessential like that. But then there are a lot of people who believe that Romania has done better in the westernization. Again, it makes me think of Ukraine, right? We can talk about the comparisons there and, well, without necessarily conflict, but that Romania is a country that has been stuck in this tug of war between two overarching forces, Western influence and Russian influence. You disagree with that notion?
This is something I can disagree fully.
Good. How's that?
Romania has been very bad for a very long time. Since we went into NATO and then in the EU, 2004, 2007, this country changed dramatically. Okay, I've seen it firsthand. I first traveled outside the country in 2003. I was already 22 of age. Yeah, I couldn't travel before 89 for sure outside the country. If you were traveling outside, you were part of the system. Mr. Georgescu traveled outside the country in the US before 1989, before the revolution. We don't actually know how he got there. And there's a lot of things also when he needs to respond and to address about this. But he's not giving interviews in unfriendly places, let's say. But still, I traveled outside of the country in 2003, and that was first time I did it on a train and then on a low-cost flight, and then now just going to Cluj. I just got back from Cluj on a low-cost flight, which was actually faster and cheaper than going with my car, and I can go do that anywhere in Europe now. Okay, so traveling to Europe has been like traveling locally for us. But I've seen firsthand the evolution of Romanians living abroad. I've been following the Romanian communities as a journalist for the leading TV station in ProTV in Italy, in Spain, in Germany. I've been seeing the work of Romanians in agriculture, in agricultural fields. There was this slur against Romanians that they were strawberry pickers. It's called căpșunar in Romanian. And I've seen violence against Romanians in Italy after one of hours. A Romanian killed an elderly woman on the street for some money. He was mentally ill and he killed a poor old lady. And for that, Italians turned on Romanians for 2 weeks. It was very, very complicated. That was around 2006, I guess. Then I witnessed Romanians going into the EU and being able to work legally and not being put into slavery. We still find pockets of slavery in Italy, in Sicily, or in Spain, where some Romanians are being put to work without papers or money. So, but that is heavily shifting. So one of the pieces of news that made me look like, what? Just in 2004, I heard that French farmers have a hard time picking their tomatoes in the fields because Romanians no longer want to do agricultural work. So Romanians were cheap labor, and we were welcomed in the EU for a long time. It took us roughly 20 years to understand the game and go to the next level. And now Romanians are doing better paying jobs. You can find them in good hotels in Paris or Rome or also London. Whenever I travel to London, I'm being greeted by a lot of Romanians in all hotels, everywhere. Romanians are everywhere. So moving from the fields to hotels, doing business and improving their overall, let's say, condition, earning more money and living better lives. That helped them, how do you call this money, sent back to home? They sent many billions back home to Romania from working in the EU. And also that helped Romania flourish. Now we have issues with the main airport in Bucharest that is 200x over capacity. In the past 4 years, the airport in Bucharest has become overwhelmed by 12 million passengers per year, and is being projected that is going to be 14 million. There's not a time of day or night that you will not find flights flying in and out, and it's always busy. It's full, it's busy. The air conditioning cannot keep up with so many people in the airport. So I've been following airports even before we had the new terminal, when the airport in Bucharest was tiny and there was just a few people flying there. That was at the beginning of my career in Bucharest, like 21, 22 years ago. And now I have a hard time. I need to go to the airport early enough. We've been talking about this earlier, to make sure I'm going to get to the gate, because it's so full. So if you want just like, one of the very few things that have been changing, just driving through this country makes you acknowledge the huge change. Yeah, we Romanians complain a lot about the lack of motorways and stuff like that. Now we are building those motorways. Yeah, we have I don't know the numbers exactly, but it's if I'm not mistaken, 10x the kilometers of motorway in the past 30 years. It's not enough. We still need more, but we are also building the subway, the underground to the airport now. Yeah, so there's building everywhere. There's a lot of money being spent on infrastructure. Businesses are rising everywhere. But for the past 6 months, everything looks like someone pulled the handbrake.
Yeah.
Most big companies have becoming careful, cautious about spending, and this is inducing real recession. Romania was the fastest growing country in EU for many years, for the past 4 years, if I'm not mistaken. I'm not so sure about 2004 and 2005 after the whole turmoil. Yeah, it's always about the economy, and the economy is getting crushed as we speak. We're gonna see the downfall of all this turmoil in the next few months. And what we've seen on the stock market with the US, I've already witnessed it on the local stock market after the first round of elections. I have a small portfolio on the Romanian stock market. It went down 10, 20, and then 30% down. So that's heavy. That's a lot.
No, it is. I think what's really interesting is the perception of Romania and Bulgaria. They're often clumped together because they joined, they were the A2 in 2007 when they joined the EU. But that's from an economic standpoint. What about the security standpoint and the relationship with NATO? Because obviously KFOR and its operations in Kosovo, NATO's actions in Serbia during the Kosovo wars in the 90s. We have another guest on quite often called James Călin, and he's very passionate about this. But there's obviously certain
Again, it's glitching on your side. I feel like the whole internet is being under attack tonight.
Well, we were never meant to meet. Obviously, this is going against George. George Buhnici is trying really hard to take you offline and me. Just I'm the Russian asset, clearly. But no, I'm just curious what your opinion is of sort of the Romanian views of NATO versus the EU, because obviously security alliance is different to the European Union, and how you see that play out and all this sort of stuff.
I'm going to be brutally honest, and I'm going to admit that there's some things for which Romanians are being called out, and some of them are true. When it comes to security, we proud ourselves with having rugby players wearing the oak leaf on their polo shirts. Actually, Romanians are not oak trees. We are more like willows. You know what a willow does when the wind is blowing? The willow goes with the wind. And I heard some historians saying that this might not be such a bad idea, because Romania is not such a big country in between three empires. For a very long time, we've been at a crossroads between the Russian, the Ottoman, Turk, and any other Western empire. Yeah, we had the Austro-Hungarians and Habsburg and stuff like that. So just surviving in the midst, in between these empires is a miracle in itself. And apparently, being a willow instead of an oak is a good idea during a storm. Many oak trees go down during violent storms. Most willows don't. So I'm not for being a willow in 2025. I'm just saying that we need to invest much more in our defense, and we started doing that for the past 2 years. We need a stronger military, because we cannot just rely on Article 5 and the fact that we are part of NATO. We are so lucky to be part of NATO, and that happened after 9/11. Yeah, after 9/11, the Americans invoked Article 5. They needed boots on the ground in many places in this world, and Romanians have actually fought and died for the NATO and American cause on the battlefield in Afghanistan. So, if I'm not mistaken, Romanians. Let's check how many Romanians dead in Afghanistan.
Well, while you do that, I would remind people that Article 5 is, a lot of people on X and MAGAs will say that, Article 5, it will be activated by the British and the French. And if the Romanians put peacekeepers in Ukraine, that's not how it works. I said this yesterday. I'll say it again. For those of you watching on George's X account, Article 5 requires consultations between the 33 NATO members. And there has to be a consensus of what the response is going to be. But even then, and this is the most critical aspect, it is up to every state as to their sovereign choice how they decide to respond. So if America doesn't want to send troops into NATO, into Ukraine, as part of a coalition of the willing, as the British are calling it, they don't have to, right? They can just send diplomatic mail and communications, right? So advance. Even Marco Rubio, I think, has said this. A bunch of stupid Congress people, MAGA puppets, have said all this. It's just wrong. Factually, by NATO's own charter, treaties, it's all very clearly there on black and white. But because people are lazy, they can't be bothered to go to the website and just look it for themselves. But anyway, George, tell me, what was the statistic you found?
So, Romania lost 27 brave men in Afghanistan. And we are above the Netherlands and Turkey and the Czech, just under Georgians. Georgia lost 32 military in that conflict. Yeah, with USA losing 2,461 and the UK 457. So just numbers that show when you do a coalition under Article 5, there will be loss of life. Facts on the ground are as it follows. We were supposed to have a military exercise to test the reaction speed of Western powers coming into Romania in case of a Russian attack. It was one of those NATO operations. It was supposed to happen just a few days ago. It was delayed because of everything with the elections and all that. And their plan was to mobilize, I don't know if I remember correctly, something like 5,000 troops in 4 days. 4 days.
Sounds about right. Yeah, sounds about that.
Yeah. Okay. So how long do you think it takes the Russians to get to Buzău, which is like an hour and a half from Bucharest, from Ukraine, if they actually go over and they, let's say, take over Ukraine.
Are they using donkeys or not?
Well, actually, they don't need to rush too much. Even with donkeys, it's not going to take so long, because most people don't realize how close we are to Crimea and through the Black Sea and also through the southern Ukraine.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So it's very easy to get into Romania and from there to Bucharest. So for us, this is reality. I just had a flashback when I was looking on Down Detector about X. Do you know what is the first sign for any special operations run by the Russians usually?
Well, cybernetic warfare.
Mm-hmm. Some social networks go down for a few hours. Internet goes down, electricity goes down, and then boats and trucks come in. So for me, when I look at this and I say, okay, I don't know, maybe there's some guys that are mad at Elon Musk. I just heard him the other day on Joe Rogan saying that he's afraid of people who will try to kill him. And I actually empathize with the guy. I don't want anyone to go against and kill Elon Musk or Donald Trump. But Donald Trump has already had 2 attempts on his life. And just the other day, there was this guy they found by the White House. So I'm sure there's opposing sides also in the US. Yeah, fighting for power, strong interest being disturbed by, I don't know, the MAGA and Elon Musk and Donald Trump. Yeah. So it's all a big power play. And Romania is a small country in between very big countries, very strong interest. And we don't actually have a strong military. We need to acknowledge that. Without NATO, we are proper F. Yeah?
That's the official term for it.
Yes. Yeah, we are like in, I love all the Guy Ritchie movies. You need to say that with a proper British accent. You are proper effed.
Well, I mean, I can say it if you want. I don't particularly.
Yeah, just do it. Do it for the Romanian people. Tell us.
We're properly fucked.
No, you need to go deeper than that.
We're properly fucked.
Yeah. So they're gonna feed us to the pigs. They're gonna go.
We're properly fucked. Okay.
And they're gonna go through bones like butter.
They're gonna go through bones like butter.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Can you feel it?
If people get through this stream, they're gonna. What does this turn into?
So yeah.
So I'm a bit curious. I wanna sort of, because we probably the glitches are quite persistent. So maybe we can come back in a couple of days and do this again. I'd rather like that, and we can have you fully connected up and everything. But there was one question that someone mentioned, which I did actually want to ask you about, because it's something I was a bit confused by. But Ingrid Langhoff asked or mentioned that Georgescu is quite good friends with one of his close friends was in the Wagner group, and police found a hell of a load of weapons and bombs or whatever, explosive materials in his house, plus 27 kilograms of gold. That's a very specific number. Can you what exactly is Ingrid talking about, and what's going on here?
So you heard me talking earlier about this mercenary Horatiu Potra, and I'm going to give you.
Okay.
Yeah, I'm going to give you. I'm going to tell you something that I haven't shared before. In the day when Horatiu Potra was first detained, we were supposed to meet. I was supposed to have him on an interview because I was investigating a few leads that were leading to him. But short story about Horatiu Potra. He's a former French Legion member and a mercenary. And he served as Georgescu security chief and coordinated private security for his campaign. He does not at this time. Mr. Georgescu said he was working with someone else. But on December 8th, Potra was detained after police stopped his luxury vehicle, we were supposed to meet, and found firearms, a tear gas device, and sharp objects. Nothing important. there was much more found just a few days ago at his place. But he faces charges related to violating Romania's firearms and ammunition laws, as well as public incitement, which he did again yesterday. He incited the people to go out on the street and cause violence. Yeah. And he's part of a broader network and stuff like that. And there's also this guy, I don't think he's such a big fish, like Bogdan Peshkir. He was the guy financing his TikTok campaign. He acknowledges to have spent more than €1 million on boosting and paying TikTok users to boost Georgescu's online presence. So it was easy for Mr. Georgescu to state that he didn't have any campaign funds, but he had all these people working for him without, let's say, a typical organization. And this is where they slipped through the cracks. Because again, we can acknowledge nothing. You cannot get to 2.2 million votes in Romania with zero budget. It's impossible.
Right.
Yeah. So there was a budget. He did not acknowledge that. He also acknowledged on TV that he lied initially about his relationship to Horatiu Potra on Potra's request. Now he admits he lied about his relationship and he acknowledges he had a relationship, but he says he does not any longer. That's a problem. Okay, so when you're connected to so many people with so many problems connected to them, it's an issue. But again, if I was a prosecutor, I would need very strong evidence against this person. Yeah. So there's a lot of people floating around him. You know who's not floating around Mr. Georgescu, and I would like to see more? I'd like to see academia. I would like to see historians.
Oh, so
teachers.
like Dugin? Maybe we could get Alexander Dugin. He's an academic.
Dugin just reshared George Simeon today.
Yeah, sorry, go on.
Dugin retweeted, shared George Simeon today.
Oh, okay. Well, there you go.
And Russia just came out the other day in support of Mr. Georgescu against European interference. Okay? So I would like to see more trustworthy people supporting a candidate. I would like to see a coalition of not only just our or POT new parties. Okay, our is becoming, let's say, like an established party, but it started as a movement. Yeah, it's called the Alliance for the Unification of Romanians, and now it became a party. So it's a proper, let's say, political organization now. It's a proper party, but POT came out of nowhere, and people thought it was connected to Mr. Georgescu. But at the same time, we have statements from Mr. Georgescu saying clearly, loud and clear, that he does not recognize, he's not part of any party. He will not work with any party. He will end all parties, and he will lead for and just with the people. How does that sound to you? No parties, just with the people. And how would that work? We get all together every Friday, 6 p.m. in the public square and vote on what? How does it actually work? Just working with the people and no political party. Democracy, again, is complicated and messy. People are frustrated, and he presented an alternative which is complicated to accept. It's if it's illegal, it is up to a court to decide again. He has some shady connections, but as I said previously, and the pro-European side, I don't know how you would like to call it, he's going to call me out again. Yes, I'm not a fan of Mr. Georgescu, but I'm not a big fan, not even of his other competitors. Okay, we are all frustrated with all politicians, but we need to acknowledge when we see issues with every politician and call them out. There's campaign funding issues in many places.
George? There's a balance there. I mean, I was reading an article in Politico earlier about Potra's calls to basically, well, he's called the decision to block Georgescu's bid a quote globalist coup. a lot of the buzzwords, a lot of what was in the space yesterday that I was co-hosting with, and you were attending. I mean, it's what he said. I'm just reading it here. He said, quote, "Call your colleagues and friends and go to the fight, boys. If we are not able to do something, who will? Go to your towns, go to Bucharest with your scythes, pitchforks and axes." He added that the globalist coup continues and now, quote, "all Romania must boil over." So this is reminding me of sort of vibes that the late Prigozhin, you know, in the mutiny in June of 2023, when Prigozhin was really, I mean, there's debate about whether he really intended to go to Moscow, but like with Prigozhin gone, Potra really seems to have come out as being an incredibly sort of violent voice in, well, a lot of establishment issues, but notably in Romania as well. He's been very active in the Sahel and the Russian activities down there as well, which I know. So no, he's actively calling for violence in this case, which I don't think would help anybody. And would that maybe not even undermine Georgescu's cause? Because if you get violence with someone who's such good friends with Georgescu, suddenly it's like, right? I don't know. What do you think? What could happen next before maybe we reconvene in the next couple of days or something? But anything you expect?
I would expect that if Mr. Potra is going to be in Dubai for longer, Romanian authorities will going to try and track him down. There is a warrant now on his name, an arrest warrant. I need to say that I've seen some investigations talking about his deep connections with parts of the Romanian government in the past. It's impossible to bring in so much gold and ammunition from Africa through an airport in Romania without being detected when you go in by the customs and the border police. So there is some investigations talking about the airport in Sibiu where he traveled to and from with many mercenaries, which were actually trained militaries in Romania. So I'm sure he's got some connections also inside, let's say, the establishment, how you'd like to call it. But his statements are, he knows that. He acknowledges that are illegal. Even George Simeon said, you need to go out and skin them alive. And today he came out and retracted, and he said, he backtracked and he said, no, it was just a figure of speech. Okay. Obviously, but still, is this a call to violence? Because there is now an investigation from the prosecutors for his statements calling people out to skin them alive. So I also get death threats. I'm also on all kind of lists, and there's also a lot of people making a lot of noise. And this is part of democracy. It's messy, and this is when it goes too far. It's not yet that far. It could be, but, and I'm going to leave you with this. Just look at, just with like Trump, look at the crowd size. Okay, that should be a good, let's say, test. So if you look at the crowd size yesterday and the crowd size tomorrow, if you could see how the sentiment is going, because all politicians that are floating around Georgescu now are just trying to get political points, to earn political points for their careers. Most politicians that are around Georgescu now, I'm speculating now, like George Simeon, are not big fans of what he's saying. They just like the attention and the traction he's bringing, similar to Trump. And I'm positive that George Simeon has plans of his own. Even inside his party, he has strong voices calling on him to become a presidential candidate, or Partidul Aur to have a different candidate. He still controls the party, and he's convinced his party to support Călin Georgescu still. I'm not so sure that will work for a very long time. The dynamics in Romanian politics, again, can be surprising. Like with Polymarket, I was talking about Polymarket. The odds are even worse today for a candidacy for Mr. Georgescu. There's other players already in the game. The game has shifted. They were ready for this. Even Călin Georgescu acknowledged he knew he might not be able to run. I'm not saying this is a good thing, but they knew. Yeah, it was part of their calculations and plans. And I'm sure they have contingency. Everybody's got some contingencies. Everybody makes plans. And always before elections in Romania, it's an interesting time to be alive. You just don't need to be caught up in the fan, like.
No, I would say a couple of things to that as we probably wrap up, which is that keep in mind there are no values, there are only interests. Well, they often say in politics, and certainly if Georgescu is no longer going to be someone that is useful for the people who want to claim power or influence the direction of Romanian politics, then they'll find someone else who, as you say, are waiting in the wings. The second thing is also very much that the more I spend on X, the more I realize how unrepresentative it is of the wider situation. There are plenty of, people who do support Trump's policies or who support these peripheral views on different things, be them the far left, but in X, mainly the far right. And it just isn't the case. I'm pretty certain that most Americans, whilst they want to see, America reduce its support for Ukraine or change certain aspects of it from policy, they certainly don't agree with most and the extremities by which Trump is going to, basically pissing off everybody. He's picking a new battle with someone every day. And so the point I'm making is that X is the people who speak the loudest are usually the ones that have the strongest opinions. And the silent majority, the people who don't necessarily need to make noise, but it will be clear that they don't agree with Trump's policies, and we're seeing that happen through minimal areas. But wait for the midterms. I'm not expecting a great result for Trump. I mean, it's a year and a half away, so we've got plenty of time. But still, point is, don't read everything you see on a specific social media website and think that it represents the prevailing narrative that exists amongst people who don't necessarily use social media as obsessively as other people who, use it to campaign and push the narratives. I can apply that myself. But I'm a centrist like you, I think, George. So yeah, anyway, I think this has been a really interesting conversation. For those of you watching on George's X account, I'm not a expert intricately of Romanian politics. I'm very passionate about the former Soviet Union and all the former Soviet states or Eastern Bloc, including Romania, where I spent collectively spent about a month, a couple of weeks here and there, traveling around bits of Romania. So I'm very passionate about the country. Okay. And, we can reconvene later in the week and talk about this. It was a real pleasure. And I look forward to doing it again. And everyone, hopefully, when we're not being sabotaged by Musk or we're sabotaging X, I don't know. Musk says the shit's still going on the internet, so we'll see. But thank you, George.
It's a funny thing. Just the other day, you were moderating on Mario's account, a space on X, and you are such a great guy. And it's nice to have a conversation with someone like you. But seeing what's happening on Mario's account, for example, it's very far from what we actually see. So it's a different reality. And this is why I called on Romanians to post in English on X. We need to engage in this conversation. We need to have chats like this. We need to talk about what's actually happening on the ground, how we see things, what the reality is, because there's a lot we don't know. And the most important thing that I always remember is that I don't actually know enough. I never know enough about a topic. This is why I'm not convinced. And when I see people that are 100% convinced of their own ideas, this is when I say, dude, okay, let me take a step back. Yeah, I'm not so sure of anything. I'm not over skeptic, but I like to have conversations, and I'm sure we'll get to the bottom of it and to the truth. But no, none of us holds the entire truth.
No, and I think that there is a lot of this emphasis that sort of it's your truth or my reality, and it's like no, there are some things that are just objectivity, maths,
of course,
data, is objective truth, but we can all make a spin on it. And
Yes.
that's why I try in my shows to try and acknowledge that, yes, I'm obviously going to have my biases, but then continue to talk about it from a varied perspective. And obviously I've challenged you with some of those questions today, because I think it's not necessarily my preferred opinion, but if we don't acknowledge the reality, like, and that is such a key thing, which is you have to engage. I don't agree with people who have left X or leave these places as much of a cesspit as they've become. I think turning away from them and only engaging in your safe space or that's not how you move the needle back and reclaim the center ground and just sense of normality. So anyway, let's do this again, George. It was mighty fun. Thank you everyone very much for watching. Stay safe out there, Romania, and well, everyone. I mean, as we say, as they've been saying on the Jurassic Park films, hold on to your butts or whatever that is, right? I like that.
And because otherwise we are all
fucked. There we go. Yeah, you're all fucked, everybody. Yeah, on that note, well, we're all fucked. That was fun.